Canning Town is a station in East London used by the Jubilee Line and the Docklands Light Railway, and incorporating a bus station. Architecturally, it's not the most interesting station in the world, apart from this rather unusual feature. It is double-decked. The story of Canning Town is long and complicated and dates back to 1847, long before the DLR or even the London Underground. It was opened under the name Barking Road by the Eastern Counties Railway. This was part of a line to North Woolwich. I covered the history of that line in another video, which I will cause to pop up in the corner there. But basically, the idea was a line from Stratford through the docks to North Woolwich. At North Woolwich, the railway operated a ferry service across the river to Woolwich. Somewhat confusingly, North Woolwich is on the opposite side of the river from the rest of Woolwich, which apparently is not known as South Woolwich. Barking Road Station was more or less here where there's now a flyover, only just north of the current station. At the time, the area was pretty sparsely populated. 3 factors encouraged local development. The railway was the first. The second was the arrival of a number of industries, notably the Thames Ironworks and Shipbuilding Company and Tate and Lyle's Sugar Refinery. And the third was the docks. In 1855, the Royal Victoria Dock opened, followed in 1880 by the Royal Albert Dock, and in 1921 King George V. This was an enormous complex of docks, the biggest in London, designed to take the largest ships in the world. The railway was important both to the local industries and to the docks, as good transport links were vital. The town itself originated as a workers' town and is believed to take its name from Charles Canning, the Viceroy of India. In 1873, reflecting the growth of the town, the station was rebuilt and renamed Canning Town. In 1888 it was closed and resited, slightly further north, here. The line was initially pretty successful, between the heavy goods traffic and the busy passenger trains. But the 20th century would bring a decline. In 1933, a trolleybus service began to run along the route of the line, offering commuters a cheaper alternative to the railway. The Second World War saw the docks heavily bombed, and the railway fell victim to this campaign too. The branch lines to Galleons and Beckton, which ran through Canning Town, were closed in 1940. The neighbouring station at Tidal Basin, next to what is now Royal Victoria, closed after a direct hit in 1943. Passenger services to Dalston and Stratford were indefinitely suspended. Following the war, buses continued to make inroads, so to speak, into passenger numbers. Lorries took an increasing share of the goods service. From the 1960s onwards, the docks went into decline. Big though they were, they couldn't handle the massive new container ships, which went to Tilbury instead. In 1970, goods services along the line were withdrawn, and no one had particularly high hopes for the passenger service. But then a funny thing happened. Well, not that funny, but, you know, you have to take your laughs where you can. In the late 70s, the Greater London Council and British Rail came together to try to revitalise the line. The decline of the docks, the last of which went in 1980, caused a massive slump in the area. Widespread unemployment and all the social problems that brought with it. It was hoped that improved transport would go some way to alleviating these problems. A new link was built to Dalston Junction, and the stations along the line, including Canning Town, were rebuilt. Canning Town became part of the North London line. But there was more to come. Even as works were being carried out, a new transport system was on the way. The London Docklands Development Corporation was set up in 1981 to, well, develop the London Docklands. Part of this was a new railway system, the Docklands Light Railway. This initially ran from Stratford and Tower Gateway to Island Gardens, but thoughts turned to extending that before this section was even opened. One was an extension to Beckton. There were several ideas as to which route this would take, but it would undoubtedly involve a station at Canning Town. But things move fast in the Docklands, and before a decision could be made on the DLR, a new player entered the game. The redevelopment of the area had taken an unexpected turn. Back in the early 80s, it was expected that the docks would be replaced with light industry, new housing, and low-rise offices. What happened instead was that the area around Canary Wharf turned into London's second financial district. The DLR was caught on the back foot. It hadn't been planned with this in mind, and it was looking desperately inadequate for the number of office workers expected. Olympia and York, the company behind Canary Wharf, pushed for a line from Waterloo to Greenwich via the Isle of Dogs. London Transport, meanwhile, were planning to extend the Jubilee line through the city to the Docklands and destinations beyond. And a number of boroughs in South and East London were asking when they could get in on the underground action, with its economic benefits. So the Jubilee line extension was approved. This would run from Green Park to Stratford and would open in 1999. Canning Town was one of the stops along the route, so it was decided that the DLR, the Jubilee line and the North London line would get a combined station. In 1994, the second Canning Town station was closed and a third was opened in 1995, the current one. This only served the North London line at first, but in 1998 the DLR arrived and in 1999 the Jubilee line. Meanwhile, yet another scheme was afoot. A new DLR line to Stratford International. Stratford International was a new station that opened in 2009 and frankly was a bit of a mess, largely because it wasn't actually international. The situation there is kind of complicated and probably merits its own video. But the long and short of it was that the section of the North London line from Stratford to North Woolwich was to close, and the bit from Stratford to Canning Town would become DLR turf. The North London platforms closed in 2006 and reopened in 2011 under new ownership. So that's the complicated history of Canning Town. The Docklands is an ever-evolving area, and Canning Town is evolving along with it. It sits in the borough of Newham, which is simultaneously the poorest borough of London, but also one that's seeing some of the most expensive new developments in the entire city. So as for what the future holds for the station, your guess is as good as mine. Well, I hope you enjoyed this double-decker tale from the tube. If you did, please do hit that like button, not literally, you'll break your screen. And if you'd like to see more, you might benefit from subscribing to the channel. Once again, I would like to give thanks to my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon. You are the Jubilee line extension to my Canary Wharf. And I'll see you all again very soon for another tale from the tube.